The Bible is a series of stories about how God continues to surprise people with his goodness. In the story of the Bible, God has wonderful plans for humans from the very beginning when he gives Adam and Eve the job of ruling the garden. There they have everything they need and they are living in relationship with God. However, that isn't enough for them. They believe they could do things better if they were in control, so they take of the fruit and sin against God. The problem that causes sin is a lack of trust in God. If only we believed in God's goodness enough to trust his plans for us all the time, we'd never sin. I believe this theme of trusting in God and that being the problem that people face is running through the entire Bible. People choose not to trust in God, or even when they do trust in God, they wildly underestimate his goodness. Let's read in Genesis 18, starting in verse 22. This is the story of Abraham bartering with God about the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah. So the men turned from there and went towards Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. Then Abraham drew near and said, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fares the wicked. Far be that from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just?" And the Lord said, "If I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Abraham answered and said, "Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking. Will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? And he said, "I will not destroy it if I find 45 there." Again he spoke to him and said, "Suppose 40 are found there." He answered, "For the sake of 40 I will not do it." Then he said, "Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there." He answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." He said, "Behold, I have undertaken to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there." He answered, "For the sake of 20 I will not destroy it." Then he said, "Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak again, but this once. Suppose 10 are found there." He answered, "For the sake of 10 I will not destroy it." And the Lord went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So this story is really strange. God is described like a merchant and Abraham is bartering with him over a price. But the surprise in this story is God's patience. In the whole conversation, God never cuts him off. It's actually Abraham that stops the discussion. So the question that's lingering in readers' minds is, what if he kept going? We don't know. Abraham never reaches the limits of God's mercy. And then later, when Abraham is tested with Isaac on the mountain, he can trust in God's goodness because he has seen God's mercy. He trusts God enough to even give up his own son. And I think this is a problem we run into in our own lives. We say that we believe in God, but do we really trust him? Are we willing to follow anywhere he sends us? Do we believe that he's really as good as he shows himself to be in the Bible? Over and over again, the biblical characters reject God in favor of their own plans, and they trust in their own wisdom over God's wisdom. When Jesus begins his ministry, he's faced with so many opportunities to insist on his own way. In Matthew 4, the devil tempts Jesus with an offer of all the nations if he would only bow down. And that sounds pretty good, to accomplish his purposes without the pain of the cross. But Jesus repeatedly defers. He trusts in the Father's plans no matter how difficult or uncomfortable they might be. Even when it comes to dying on the cross, where Jesus had to give up his own life. Just like Abraham, Jesus had seen enough of God's goodness to put his trust in him. As we try to live as followers of Jesus, we also are going to have plenty of opportunities to seize control of our lives and live according to our own wisdom instead of God's wisdom. Every time we are faced with that temptation, we should instead trust in God's goodness and believe that he will answer our prayers when we need help. Just like Abraham and Jesus, we have seen the Father's wonderful grace over and over again in the Bible, in our lives, in the lives of the people around us. And because we have seen that grace, we can put our trust in God's wonderful plans and live like he intended for us to live, loving him and loving our neighbors every day. If you need to put your trust in the Lord tonight and be baptized, or if you need anything from this congregation, come forward as we stand and sing.